Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. UFC 316, just a couple of days away. We're here to preview that card, which takes place in the Prudential Center in New Jersey, Newark, home of Tony Soprano, home of beautiful meats and rolls and all that kind of stuff that used to be eaten. A bit of gabagool over there. You'll get it over there. There will be a couple of fighters on this card who will be sleeping with the fishes if they do not come out on top on Saturday night. Merab Dvalishvili defends his bantamweight title against Sugar Sean O'Malley in the main event. Juliana Pena versus Kayla Harrison is your co-main event. That's for Juliana Pena's bantamweight title as well. A hotly contested fight there in the co-main and main event. Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer fights at 185. Mario Batista welcomes Patchy Mix into the UFC in the 135-pound division. In the welterweight division, we've got my favorite fighter in the world, Vicente Luque, who takes on Kevin Holland. And it is a fantastic card overall for us to get our teeth stuck into. Lads, how are we doing? Sugar Sean Sheehan with me, of course, and Paul Browne to break down the card with me. Look, as I was running through it there, lads, it's a pretty damn good card and a pretty solid main event overall with lots of different kind of stories and narratives, rematches, rivalries and debuts. Sean, you looking forward to it?
I am. You asked me this last week. I was like, oh no, and then the main event fell out. I think I was right.
You're right. You're right.
Do you know the weird thing about this card is I feel like we're at a bit of like a lull in MMA at the moment. And that happens sometimes. Like May wasn't the best of months. It feels like a while since we've had a big fight. There was no PFL. The main event of the last card just fell out. There was a week off before that. So it feels like, we're in kind of a break from MMA. But do you know what? When that break ends, it's always the best of times. That card and then the first card of the new year when maybe we haven't seen a whole lot of MMA, maybe apart from a bit of Risen or a bit of Cage Warriors, is always brilliant. Maybe this will be after a mini break, a sort of thing that will be great for the fans as well. Just in short, I think the main event will be a lot different of a fight than the one we saw before. I think the co-main event has the possibility to be a lot of different things, but also has the possibility to be exactly what everyone thinks. And then there's a few fights in this card that I think a lot of people will have very strong opinions one way, and a lot of people will have very strong opinions the other way. Gastelum Pyfer, Batista Mix, Holland Luque, all of them. Even seen our picks coming in over in SevereMMA. We usually have very similar thoughts, but there's a lot of different thoughts, I think, for this card. So, especially those three fights, we can, we're obviously going to talk about the main and the co-main, but those three fights, I think there's a lot of different ways they can go. And you know what? That's the best thing about MMA. We love MMA because you don't know who's going to win. And we have a main card of a lot of fights that maybe we can predict, but maybe we can't either.
Yeah, that's what makes a really fantastic card. And I do agree with you, Sean. We did have the break in the action. We were coming in, Paul, now on a run of events that, I think it's 7 events. We've got 2 pay-per-views to look forward to in the month of June and no Apex cards for the next 7 events. So, that's all promise and signs. And what's been a fairly slow start to the year, has to be said, in the world of the UFC, on what is a potentially massive year for them with the TV rights, broadcast deal and everything like that. This card is a good card to kind of whet our appetite and get us warmed up for the rest of the action over the next couple of weeks as well. And I'm sure you're just looking forward to it. Anyone that's really standing out to you on this card that you're really excited for, Paul?
The Patchy Mix UFC debut is the one that has me sort of excited. In my mind, I'm sure we'll get to the fight later. In my mind, I know who's going to win the fight, but I'm just excited to see whether he's at the level of someone who can maybe break into that bantamweight title discussion in the UFC. I think he's a phenomenal fighter, and I can't wait to see him, fighting at the highest level. But overall, like you mentioned, all the cards that are coming up now. I mean, I read today between June and July, there isn't a single Apex card. And that makes me very, very happy because, like you mentioned, the first half of this year has been a bit, we'll say, underwhelming when it comes to like name value and big fights and that kind of thing. Lex Pereira fought once and was beaten, and Topuri, we're still waiting. We're not getting that matchup with Makachev. So there's been a lot of like duds, disappointment, the Aspinall thing and whatnot. But right now we got a handful of cards ahead of us. Like we've got this one this weekend, the end of the month, Stopuri and Oliveira, and then you've got Usman and Buckley, you've got Hill and Roundtree Jr. You know, you've got some good cards in the horizon. So keep the good fights coming. It's time to light this bitch up.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Let's light it up. Let's light it up in the main event. Merab coming in here. Merab coming in here to defend his title in a rematch against Sean O'Malley. I guess a lot of the talk that I have seen coming in to this fight is a massive change up for Sean O'Malley, a guy who has self-proclaimed bought into the sugar mantra a little bit too much. You know, we've had C-level Kane, we've had what? TRT Belfort, we've had Dad Cerrone, and now we have marijuana, weed-free Sugar Sean O'Malley. And I guess, Will, the big question is coming into this fight, all of those changes, all of those things that Sean has kind of got out of his life to add an extra focus onto his mixed martial arts skill set, will they translate into the cage? Because Shawnee, you know, coming in here against a guy like Merab, obviously the physical aspect is very important. The skill set that you bring in there to a guy like Merab is very important. But also there's a mental factor here for Sean O'Malley as well. And that's a big thing, I feel, coming in against a guy that has beaten you before, against a guy who's tailor-made for your style, if you're Sean O'Malley as well. And, you know, I think all of those little small facets as well make this very, very encouraging. On Merab's side, of course, as well, you know, he's coming in injured, he's a broken toe, but that's not new either. You know, that's just a normal average fight camp for Merab. So lots of little intricacies here for us to kind of sink our teeth into.
Yeah, the thing you said, Merab was tailor-made for O'Malley. I don't necessarily agree with that, but he could be tailor-made for O'Malley if the fight goes a certain way. And that phrase, right, if the fight goes a certain way, I think is a key to the breakdown of all aspects of this. Now, there's so many factors determining this. One thing I want to throw out there straight away is that they fought their first fight in the UFC Nache card in the Sphere. And I'll be honest, I said I'd nearly throw out that fight altogether, because that night people were not fighting right. It was very weird. People like literally got caught up in the lights. I don't think Merab fought amazingly. I don't think Sean fought amazingly. It could be a very different fight. You said there, Ian, about O'Malley changing a lot of things. I actually think Merab could change an awful lot coming into this fight as well. Like Merab in that fight and in the subsequent fight against Umar didn't have his 150 takedowns. Like he was striking a lot more. He was still taking lands down, especially at intervals in the fight. Let's put it that way.
I definitely think he performed better in that fight than he did against O'Malley for sure.
Yeah. So we're talking about O'Malley changing up his game plan possibly, or being a different fighter. I actually think Merab could be, you know, change up his game plan to be more like the Merab we saw before against the guy like O'Malley and wrestle non-stop. But I think just one last point on that before I throw it back to you. You talked about mentality, right? And mentality is a tough one. Like I never really buy into much of the trash talk or any of the talk beforehand or anything like that. But for Sean O'Malley, or a fighter like Sean O'Malley against a fighter like Merab, if you don't have the proper mentality, you're goosed, right? You need all the skills, you need the game plan and everything like that. But if you don't have the mentality that you're going to beat him in whatever way you choose, maybe, and let's say he decides, I need to knock this guy out. I have 25 minutes. If I get taken down 150 times, I'm going to get up 151. And I'm going to try to knock him out 152. That makes no sense, but go with me. That's what he needs to do. And he needs to stick to it and go for it. Or if it's to outpoint him, stick to it. Go for it. Believe in it. And if he doesn't do that, he'll lose. Like almost 100% certainly he will lose. Like this fight is made for Merab to win via decision. If everything else is equal, he will. O'Malley needs to step above the parapet, be special, and believe in himself. And he has to believe in himself to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, moving over to your perspective on the fight itself, Paul, obviously we've seen this before. We've seen 25 minutes of action between these two. You know, I do agree with some aspects of what Sean said, and that none of them, I think, fought at 100% of their capabilities. And I think, you know, obviously, sometimes I feel you get a better fight the next time for rematches because they're in there. They've read each other. They've spent that 25 minutes with each other as well. From what you've seen in the first fight, Paul, do you expect to see the same, or what differences do you expect to see in this rematch between the two?
I certainly think Sean O'Malley can't possibly fight as badly as he did in the first one. He really, really looked off his game, considering the fights we had seen in the lead up to that. He'd actually looked excellent. I mean, I know the strength of competition he'd been in there against maybe wasn't on the same level that Merab has been in there against over his kind of recent run, but you know, he'd looked like he was really getting into his flow, growing into himself as a fighter. You mentioned earlier, like, you know, Cardio Kane and TRT Belfort and all these guys. The difference with Sean O'Malley is those guys that you mentioned, they're all like, effectively, they were all over the hill, which is where they sort of, you know, ended up being in a position where, you know, you notice the drop off in their performance. But Sean O'Malley's only 30. So, I mean, it's not like, you know, we saw a Sean O'Malley that was past it the last day. We just saw a Sean O'Malley. Now, according to his account, was very, very injured going into the fight and whatnot. None of us really knows the severity of that, but it could well have been a big factor. He certainly didn't look as loose and as fluid and as mobile as he normally does. Decision making as well, I think, is a big thing. We saw how he hurt him late on because he started throwing kicks because he was in a desperate position. He was down 3-1 on the scorecards. He had nicked the third round when Merab basically just took the second half of that round off, and O'Malley managed to tag him a few times, and then Merab turned it back up again and won the fourth. So the fight was effectively gone on the scorecards at that point. And up to that point, O'Malley hadn't thrown a kick whatsoever. Now he started letting the kicks go. Presumably that was probably either, I mean, one of two reasons. You know, something to do with an injury. He was maybe, you know, worrying about whatever, it was a hip injury he was talking about, wasn't it? Or he was worried about getting taken down so much. But in reality, he got taken down very easily anyway. And then in the fifth round, he kind of let loose with the kicks, and some of those landed to the body. There was 2 or 3 of them that caused Merab issues. So maybe he'll look at that, you know, and he'll see that he has a path to victory, because he was trying to tag the body early with the, you know, dipping throw and the straight right. And he was trying that over and over and not really getting that success with it, because Merab didn't, like Shawnee mentioned, he didn't fight in that usual Marauder style that he does. Yeah. And this is something that he's changed specifically since he's moved to fighting 5-round fights. He's absolutely changed his output and his approach from when he moved from fighting 3-round fights to 5-round fights.
And I feel, Paul, kind of caught Sean O'Malley a little bit by surprise too in the first fight as well, when you're kind of maybe focusing your game plan on defending those takedowns, and then you get something completely different. It can kind of throw you for a loop as well. And I would maybe argue as well, lads, that Merab might flip this script again in this second fight, where he does go on that marauding style, and he does go to try and push Sean O'Malley up against the cage and take him down at will and try to frustrate him. That's what I'm really kind of feeling on the mentality side of things, that if he can do that and mentally break Sean O'Malley, where he gets frustrated and kind of, you know, takes the win away from him altogether, you know, I think that might be the best route for Merab this time around as well, rather than maybe trying to do what he did in the first fight. Would I be right or wrong in saying that, Paul?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got more gears that he can go up through as well, given that performance, because like I mentioned, he was kind of taking breaks in certain rounds, and he'll feel that he dominated O'Malley so much that he could probably think, you know what, I can actually go in and really put it on this guy now, because I know how much better I am than him. I have firsthand evidence of it. But like I said, there's variables. O'Malley's going to come out that bit better, and I'm interested to see what they do differently. Not just like Merab's output or his aggression, but you know, what weapons get used differently. But certainly, yeah, Merab, I could see a world where he does try to just get on him from the start, but the sample size that we only have those 2 5-round fights, you know, since he's moved up. So we've seen it's a noticeable downturn in his overall output. He maybe doesn't try to go flat to the mat for 5 rounds the way he used to for 3. But does he gamble at all by doing that? Because he's not a guy that's been renowned for picking up finishes. I'm going to pull up his record here: 12-2 in the UFC, one finish and 11 decisions. Like, so this probably explains a lot as why he's maybe just started to pace himself or tried to spread his output out over the 5 rounds. Maybe he's you know, he realizes that the odds on him actually getting somebody out of there are, you know, he doesn't have full confidence in doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, very, very good points there, Shawnee. For me, looking at Merab and, you know, where he is in his career, my personal opinion on it anyway is that I feel that even at 34 years of age that we're seeing these improvements every time he's getting into the cage now. And I think especially after he's won the title, and we've talked time and time again about, you know, the confidence that a fighter can get when they win the title. It adds maybe extra percentages onto their skill set. But for me in particular, I've been massively impressed with the development of Merab's striking, which, you know, was first on show against O'Malley, again in the Nurmagomedov fight. And, you know, that can lead you down a road where you might fall in love with striking a little bit too much and you forget what gets you to the dance. And I think, you know, that's definitely something that I feel Merab will have to try and keep under wraps in this fight with O'Malley, because if he gets a little bit too brave on the feet here, if Sean O'Malley comes in at 100%, all it takes is one shot, as you said, I think, on the big podcast this week.
100%. And that's the 2 points I just made a few minutes ago. Like, that's why O'Malley needs to be ultra confident that he can knock him out. And that's why Merab might just change up that game plan and go for him. Like, it's funny, like those two fights, the first O'Malley fight and the Nurmagomedov fight, are exactly the same on the scorecards, but upside down. Like 48, 47, 48, 47, 49, 46. Merab won all three judges on the first 2 rounds against O'Malley, and the fourth and fifth on all 3 judges for the other fight, and against O'Malley in the and this is crazy to look back at it. You know, Paul kind of alluded to it there, but and he gave good reasoning behind it. But when you look at it just in black and white, the last 3 rounds, right? If we take away the first 2 rounds of O'Malley and Vashvili, Sean O'Malley wins that fight. He won 2 of the last 3 rounds on 2 judges' scorecards. So he had won 29-28, which is crazy to think when you think about Merab versus Sean O'Malley. You're thinking of this lad who is a marauder, who non-stop, who breaks guys, and against O'Malley, a guy who, you know, he got taken out a few times. He got laid on top of a good bit. So there is hope there from O'Malley. If I was looking at that in black and white, I think for O'Malley, as Paul said, towards the end of that fight, O'Malley did some good things. That's one great bit of hope that can, you know, sometimes these lads have to delude themselves into believing it. And, you know, we talk about belief, but it's really, sometimes it's delusion. You have to delude yourself into doing it. But if you are, if you're either of these 2 guys, I think you really have to look at those things, and you have to adjust based on that. And here's two points I'll give you, for one for either of them. For Merab, he didn't take O'Malley down over and over and over again, but there was long periods, again, at times where he laid on top of him. Now, Merab doesn't really do that. And I'm sure there are fights you can pick out where maybe he has 2.5 minutes of top time, right? Or whatever, consecutively. Merab usually has 2.5 minutes of top time over the space of 4 minutes with 16 takedowns in between them. You know, it's 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 7 seconds, up, takedown, up, type of thing. But against O'Malley, he was successfully able to hold him down, which you wouldn't think would be a thing, not just based on his ability, but based on the way he has fought in the past. So, and like, there were times as well that O'Malley was able to get up, right? So from that point of view, if you're Merab, you're entering this fight, I'm going to take him down because I can keep him down. If Merab gets a takedown early in rounds, he knows that he can hold O'Malley down, right? So that's something he should be really gunning for in this fight. Early takedowns will win you rounds. For O'Malley, the other side of it, he cannot allow Merab to take him down and hold him down. He needs to get up and up and up and up. And if it turns into one of the fights where it's Merab taking a lad down 150 times, that's the second best option here. That really, really is, because at least that gives you a chance. If he's just laying on top of you like he did at periods in that first fight, again, I'll use the phrase, you're goosed. You're absolutely goosed. And like, I know if we're getting the picks now, but that's why I'm picking Merab, because I think there's the two most straightforward ways the fight goes. Both signal Merab winning the fight. Like we're almost having a leap of faith if we pick O'Malley to catch him in the middle of all of that. Now, one last thing I'll throw it back from O'Malley's point of view. I've always maintained with guys like Merab are like really strong wrestlers against guys like O'Malley who are really strong strikers. This fight is not won on the ground. This fight, for O'Malley, this fight is not won by getting back up. This fight, and it's not won by even stopping takedowns or getting taken down. This fight is won by the footwork on the feet and the ability to determine where the fight is fought. O'Malley cannot afford to let Merab push him back and push him against the fence and take him down. And the biggest issue, right, with this is, and as Paul alluded to, O'Malley fought so badly in the first fight because he did push Merab back at times and got taken down when he was pushing him back. If that happens again here early, this fight, we might as well forget about it. We might as well turn it off because Merab will definitely win it. O'Malley needs to push him forward, hurt him, and not allow him to get taken down. He needs to fucking, I said on a big podcast, old school Chuck Liddell, sprawl and brawly, and you love it. We talk about your favorite fighter. Push that, break his fucking nose, push the head down into the fucking canvas, get back up and get away from the fucker. That's what he needs to do. He needs to be non-stop on it from fucking the word go. And that's how O'Malley wins the fight. And if he doesn't do that, he won't win it. He will not win it.
100%. I agree with the majority. I think if O'Malley comes out with a mohawk and a beer belly, that's it. It's all over for Merab. The defining factor for you, Paul, in this main event, what is it? How do you see it going? Who do you think is going to get their hand raised?
I think if we see the Sean O'Malley that fought Aljamain Sterling, where, like Shawnee mentioned, his footwork and his feints were a key factor in just killing the wrestling of Aljamain Sterling. If we see that version of Sean O'Malley, he has a real chance. The Sean O'Malley that fought in September, I mean, he just looks so leaden-footed, and that was noticeably absent. I think that killed him early, you know. And Shawnee mentioned that Sean O'Malley won two of the last 3 rounds, but I believe that he only won that 3rd round because Merab was 2.5 rounds up and sort of just coasted a little bit and allowed himself to get caught. You know what I mean? So I think, like Sean said, if he starts to fight poorly like that, it's a long way back. Overall, I'd be leaning toward Merab because I think that wrestling is just a get out of jail free card for him. The ease with which he got O'Malley down to the canvas when he did take him down, I know he didn't get him down a whole lot, but the ease with which he was able to do some of it, if you watch those takedowns back, it was kind of worrying, you know. So if that version of O'Malley is trying to defend those takedowns, he's in real trouble. So I'd be leaning towards Merab, but absolutely there's the potential for Sean O'Malley to come out there and just keep Merab guessing, keep him at range and just pick him off. So yeah, lean Merab.
Same as myself, Merab be a decision too. And maybe I kind of gave it away when I was kind of trying to analyze the fight at the start and saying that I feel that Merab's style, a particular aspect of Merab's style, is perfect for what Sean O'Malley brings to the table. And I think it's that blanket wrestling. It's that non-stop grinding, forward moving, frustrating. You know, don't try and pick a guy like Sean O'Malley off, because I think that you're asking for trouble there if you're Merab. And I can't really say too much more than what both you fellas have said already. I just think that, it's going to have to be that kind of a job for Merab. It might not be that exciting to look at, but it can get the job done, and that's all that matters for a guy like Merab. And it's a massive fight, and the more and more I talk about it, especially here with you guys, I'm really looking at. There was a little bit of backlash when this fight was announced. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's a fascinating matchup, and I think it's going to deliver one way or another. At the end of the day, even if Sean does get taken down, he's going to have the chance to get up 4 times in this fight and have a crack at Merab. So that in its own right is going to be exciting. We could see something similar in the co-main event and a lack of excitement between Juliana Pena, who defends her title, against Kayla Harrison. Huge moment here for Kayla Harrison, Paul. I think, for as long as I've been talking about Kayla Harrison inside the UFC, for as long as I have been talking about Kayla Harrison getting down to 135 pounds, I've said it time and time again. I think her biggest battle is always against the scale and how much of it, or of her abilities, are going to be taken away by trying to make 135 pounds. Now, she's in a scenario here where she's had to make it multiple times already. And I think she did well against Holly Holm. I think in her last fight against Caitlin Vieira, we saw signs that it does take a little bit out of her. And, you know, if it takes a little bit more out of her this time around, I think that's what could make this a very interesting fight. Because Juliana Pena does have a kind of a forward move and pressure style. She doesn't really have too much worries with her cardio. I mean, she gets tired, but she doesn't get gassed, and she can definitely use it to her advantage in this fight. But it's all dependent on how Kayla Harrison gets off the scale and how she looks on the course of this fight.
Yeah, the extra pound for championship weight as well. She's never made that weight. Also, then there's the extra 2 rounds as well. Very likely that we'll see those extra 2 rounds. So, you know, big questions, and that's the big questions are why we want to see these fights, because we want to see those questions answered. I thought Caitlin Vieira laid out a good blueprint for sort of nullifying the style of grappling that Kayla Harrison brings to the table. So Kayla doesn't a hell of a lot doesn't shoot for the legs. She will try and lock in on the upper body, and Caitlin Vieira did a great job of never allowing her to connect her hands. So if you watch the fight back, she does a good job of either keeping her elbow tucked so that she can't pummel inside, or on the other side, she was making sure she always got wrist control. It's one or the other. So even the time she got pushed back to defense, she quickly made sure to get those. Now that kind of made it a bit of a dull fight at times because it put them in a sort of a stalemate position. But, you know, Juliana Pena and anyone else who fights Kayla Harrison will have been looking at that. We did see when Pena switched it up on the instruction of her coach, I think it was in the 3rd round, and she actually shot that bit lower and got to the hips and got her hands connected, that she was able to drag her down to the floor, ended the fight by passing into mount. So if she gets her down, she has the potential to kind of to do damage to anybody down there. You know, she didn't have the extra gear to go into as far as ground and pound and chasing to finish once she kind of got there, or maybe she ran out of time. But we've seen the threat that she brings. She tried to stand and strike with Caitlin Vieira for a while, and a couple of shots she was a little bit successful with early, but her striking is kind of so basic and rudimentary that it was easy for Vieira to get reads on her. You know, that left kick from the southpaw stance and a couple of other shots, that there wasn't a whole lot of variety coming. So Caitlin Vieira was quickly able to snuff those out and able to read her feints and then relax a little bit, because what we were seeing with Kayla was a hell of a lot of feints, but feints only work if you land a shot. So if I tag you with a jab and you get stung and then I feint the jab, you're going to react. But if I'm just feinting the jab and feinting a jab for 5 minutes, you're eventually going to cotton on that jab's not coming. So I don't need to be biting on every little feint and fake. So we 100%. Saw a bit of that, you know. And speaking of jabs, then Juliana Pena, what we saw in her fight with Pennington, where she questionably won the title back, she has a decent jab there too, you know. And if she can kind of keep Kayla Harrison out at that range, she could be onto a winner there, you know. Now, I don't think she'll have enough to get over the line here against Kayla Harrison, but that for me would be possibly her path to victory. Either way, I think we could be in for a bit of a testing fight for the viewer. So it could be a little bit of a, you know, a cat and mouse.
Struggle City there for you boys over there around 4 o'clock in the morning, boys. I'll be nice and sprightly about 9:30, 10 o'clock here. The prime of life. I definitely agree with you there. Could be, I know, I'll get the picks in a minute, because, you know, I have a tendency to do this show and then change my picks after I talk out fights fully.
You'll notice I never send my picks into the group until after we do this either.
Yeah, good
that happens to me too.
Good call, Paul. The jab of Juliana Pena, like you said, Paul, is decent, and that's the perfect word to describe it. It's decent, but it's nothing special. And, you know, arguably after that jab, nothing else comes, Sean. Nothing really else comes from Juliana Pena. I think what we're dealing with here, if you're Kayla Harrison, is probably the worst striker that she's faced in the UFC so far. And one, you know, that she, funnily enough, fights for the title. And I think that could play into her favor as well, where, you know, Kayla Harrison's striking is not great too. It's a little bit slow. It's a little bit lethargic. There's nothing special about it. It's basic fundamentals, really. But, you know, there might be a more level of confidence of going in there and trading with someone like Juliana Pena, who, you know, doesn't really appear to have the power to hurt anybody on the feet. has only that jab as well. And it might play into Kayla Harrison's favor. How do you see it going?
Yeah, this is interesting. If this turns into a 5-round Juliana Pena jabbing fest where she outstrikes Kayla Harrison, we might be up there for one of the most low-level fights we've ever seen in the history of the. If that happens, but Jesus Christ,
we shouldn't be even putting it out into the universe.
Say a prayer. What's more likely to happen in that scenario is probably Kayla Harrison just being like a tad bit better technically than Juliana Pena and winning. But I think that's the least likely scenario of all of this. I think when you're Kayla Harrison, we talked about the 5 rounds in the last fight. This 5 rounds is massive for Kayla Harrison because, as both of you alluded to, that weight cut, like that extra pound. I was listening to, I think it was Brian Alvarez talking about it. And like that extra pound for someone like Kayla Harrison is not just a pound. That's months. That's taking off weight at the top end so you don't have to cut more out. That's a lot, and that takes a lot out of you. In my opinion, when that's the case, you have to strip it all back. You have to get the bare bones, and you have to be a judoka in there. Early doors, get in and fucking take her to the ground, hop her face off the fucking ground, get her down there and beat the living shit out of her on the ground. That's what you do if you're Kayla Harrison. That's what gets you the least fatigued. That's what helps you go if you need to go 5 rounds. That's where you can do it the best. Because the path to victory here for Juliana Pena is the Darren Elkins pat. It's the Juliana Pena pat we've seen before. It's to probably lose 2.5, 3.5 rounds and then get up like Lazarus and be, as you said, Ian, she gets tired but she doesn't get fatigued. Be there when your opponent is tired and then make them fatigued while you're not fatigued. And at that stage, your black belt, your gold medals, your PFL title are in the crowd with the rest of them looking on, and you're going down a waterfall and there's someone behind you about to get you. And that's like Juliana Pena is not a great fighter. She's not massively brilliant technically. She doesn't have the best skill set. But what she is a tough bitch. And she'll keep fucking coming for you and go at it and go at it and go at it. And she's a fucking winner too, is what she is. So if you're Kayla Harrison, you have to beat her early. You have to destroy her. Because if you leave her there, and if there's 2 minutes left or 10 minutes left, she has the possibility to catch you. And like I think we'd be really stupid to sit here or anyone listening to this and write off Juliana Pena. Look, this is a fight. I'll tell you all, Shawnee, Paul, and Ian are all going to pick Kayla Harris to win this fight. Spoiler alert. But Juliana Pena has a chance. She has a chance because of what she's done in the past. If we were to write her off, it'd be stupid. What I think will happen, though, is I just think Kayla Harrison, early doors, what I said, she's just going to be too athletic. If she gets down to that weight and can put it back on well, she's going to be too big for her, too strong, and really make this an issue. Because I think the point that I said earlier on about getting back to brass tacks because of the 5 rounds, because of the weight cut, will really help her. If she goes out and she strikes and does bits and pieces with Juliana Pena, that's okay. Go out there and be that judoka, get her to the ground and beat her up there. And I think she will. And I think she'll end up finishing her there. But don't let her survive.
Yeah, I think the first 3 rounds here are going to be massively important. The only thing I could add about that, and I kind of alluded to with, the level of striking that both these women have, I think the lack of, danger that maybe that Juliana is perceived on the feet to have might give Kayla Harrison more confidence to open up with her striking, which will also open up her judo, which will also allow her to close the distance and get close and get the fight down. Whereas that, she did not, she did well against Holly Holm. She might not have had that confidence early days against Holly Holm. She didn't look to have that type of confidence against someone like Caitlin Vieira in her last fight either, who hits heavy and was doing very well on the feet. No, that's an avenue that Kayla Harrison, I think, will be willing to explore. And, we'll all be keeping a very watchful eye on that weighing scales on Friday morning, I tell you that, or Friday afternoon, wherever you're looking at it.
Can I ask you a question?
Shawnee, quick one for you. Have you done the Sherdog betting show yet?
I have.
I have a great bet for you.
Go on.
What else would you get on a female fighter pulling out of a UFC main card 2 weeks in a row due to weight issues.
I could see it. I could see it happening.
Yeah.
What did I said that on something as well. That do you know what? That'd actually be not that big a prediction, to be honest, because like that. I said, was it to you, Ian? I was like, I don't think she'll. I actually said, I said the fight won't happen. I said someone else might.
You said Pena might pull out.
Because I think that's a possibility. But does Pena have the ability to do what Larissa Pacheco did to her lads? Like, and what did Larissa Pacheco do? She just stayed in there and made every little thing a battle. Like, if Pena can do that, that's not an easy thing to fight against with that weight cut either. If that goes to the 4th or 5th round, is that a possibility, do you think?
I think it's definitely a possibility, but I think what Larissa Pacheco was able to match Kayla Harrison in was strength and power. And I'm not sure whether Juliana Pena has that because, you know, technically speaking, she'll probably be the smaller of the two going in there, if depending on how well that Kayla Harrison can kind of rehydrate and stuff like that too. But like, I mean, there's, like you said, Shawnee, there's no doubting her mentality and no doubting her toughness. Like, she's going to be able to take a lot of the punches that Kayla Harrison is going to be able to kind of deliver. And I feel if she can walk through some of those punches, especially later in the fight, that's where things get very, very interesting for me. I think Kayla Harrison is going to go balls to the wall here, lads, to try and get this fight done and over early. And if she does do that and she doesn't manage to get Pena out of there, well, I think the last 2.5 rounds are going to be very, very interesting in this fight. And talking about bets, you could see a draw, maybe. Imagine, you know, you could have Kayla Harrison win a couple of early fights, Pena win round 4, a 10-8 in round 5. You know, that's not a bad one either. But interesting times ahead in the women's bantamweight division. A fight that women's mixed martial arts needs. I think it's a good fight. I think a win for Kayla Harrison is probably do that division favors. It'll probably bring back Amanda Nunes as well. Maybe both women. I know there's a bit of history there with Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes as well. So I'm sure I'd be surprised if she wasn't in attendance for this one and watching on closely. You know, hopefully that fight delivers. It has the potential to deliver and has the potential to absolutely not deliver as well. So we'll see what happens on Saturday night. Speaking of not delivering, this fight did not deliver the last time it was scheduled, and that's Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer was forced to pull out because he had some health issues down in Mexico. He blames, loosely blames some dodgy tacos or whatever the hell he eat down there anyway. But it happens to the best of us, lads. I know many people who've traveled down to Mexico. It's a popular destination to go down here in the winter in Canada.
Sometimes these things happen in MMA.
Absolutely. But alas, it's here. It's on Saturday night. It's in New Jersey. Stay away from the dodgy salami, Joe Pyfer. Get there healthy. It's at 185, so we don't really have any fears of Kelvin Gastelum missing weight, although it's not beyond all possibility either. When you're looking at this one, Shawnee, how do you kind of see this fight? It's a great opportunity for Joe Pyfer to come in here, have a good performance against a well-known guy, and it's the type of fight that Kelvin Gastelum has been in for the last 3 or 4 years now. Right now, he's always put into this kind of slot, you know, kind of the gatekeeper to the gatekeeper. In terms of, you know, welcoming the maybe the fresh younger talent, the prospects coming into the division, and he has another one in front of him in Joe Pyfer, obviously a guy who always has a chip on his shoulders, always seems to be mad at something, and translates into his fight sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yeah, he's there's a little bit of there's a little bit of Kevin Holland in him, in that when he looks good, early day Kevin Holland, when he looks good, he looks really, really good. But the bad parts are like, you know, you fall off a cliff. I think an interesting thing with this fight is how Joe Pyfer fights, knowing that Kelvin Gastelum has never been knocked out in his career in 29 fights. You know, Pyfer 9 knockouts and 13 wins. That's a whole lot here. You know, we saw against Jack Hermanson who went to decision. He lost that one. That was only 2 fights ago. You know, with all due respect to Marc-Andre Barrios, he's not the same level of fighter. This is, you know, Pyfer's a big favorite and all that, but this is kind of a step up in class here. And like, you can say what you want. Like, Gastelum has somewhat become a bit of a laughing stock over the years because of the misses weight and stuff. Gastelum's a damn good fighter and a really good technical fighter and has beaten some really, really good guys down through the years. And if Joe Pyfer doesn't go in there and doesn't look his best, Kelvin Gastelum can absolutely beat him. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Like, we talked in the last two fights about the decision fighting. Okay, this is 3 rounds versus those being 5 rounds. But I think a similar thing goes for Pyfer. Like, how do you adjust to fight a guy that you mightn't get out of there? Like, what little things are you going to do to show us that you can be a technical fighter at the very highest level? Now, let's say when you do go and start fighting 5 rounds, and okay, the Hermansson fight was 5 rounds, and he lost that one. But what improvements can you show us from that fight to this one? Because
it's this very similar fight, Johnny, when you think of it, is because Hermansson is not an easy guy to get out of there either, and Pyfer struggled to get him out of there, and he was kind of like a rabbit in headlights. Then he didn't know what to do. He's like, shit, this guy is taking on my punches, and that's a scary situation to be in. So to kind of piggyback what you're saying, I think this is an important fight for him to show the developments and the lessons that he learned from that fight against Jack Hermansson as well.
Exactly. And Gastelum is not one of these guys that's like towards the end of his career. Like, he's 33 years of age. Like, he beat Daniel Rodriguez in his last fight. He beat Chris Curtis 2 fights before that. Like, all the guys that are beating him, Sean Brady, Cannonier, Whitaker, Hermansson, Till, Adesanya, like, apart from Till, they're all really good guys, I think this is a potential banana skin for Joe Pyfer. Now, I think this is the sort of fight that Pyfer won't go out there and blow his load and try to knock him out like he does in a lot of these fights. I think as we both kind of alluded to there, that Hermansson fight will have to play into his thinking going into this. I think it's going to be a longer fight. I think it's going to be more drawn out. And you know what? I think that might favor Gastelum. Like, my pick in this fight is the fight to go to a decision more than anything else. I think this is going to be a longer fight. I think it's going to be more drawn out, but it's an interesting one. As you said there, we're going to learn a lot about Joe Pyfer. Like, if Joe Pyfer was to go in here, and let's say, okay, if he was going to knock him out in 10 seconds, we'd learn a bit and it'd be a great win. But if he was to go in and, like, let's say, win the fight over the first 1 3/4 rounds and maybe didn't finish him or end up winning the decision even and look really, really good, I think what we have then is a really, really interesting fighter on our hands. He can be that, Pyfer can. I have real high hopes for him, but is again a potential banana skin against a guy who's technically really good like Kelvin Gastelum and tough as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Paul, how do you see the fight playing out?
I think the size of Pyfer might be a factor. It might be a big factor because I think there's a massive size difference going to be at play here. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum has kind of, realistically, he's a welterweight who is just not being disciplined and not being able to make weight effectively. When we look at his run of like wins and losses, and Shawnee reeled them off there, a lot of like big names have beaten him and whatnot. The last really top quality fighter that he beat at middleweight was Jack Ray back in 2018. So it's been a long time. He then went 1-5 in the middleweight division. He did pick up a win over Chris Curtis, but Chris Curtis is Chris Curtis, isn't he? Made the drop down to welterweight, didn't go very well for him, and now he's back at middleweight. Joe Pyfer outsizes most middleweights, and Gastelum, definitely is undersized at that weight class. So I have a feeling that could be a big factor, but like Sean said, Gastelum is very wily. He's been around a hell of a long time. He's been in there with some really, really top level middleweights as well. So we're going to see if he still has enough left to kind of outclass a guy who's going to probably look like he's 2 weight classes bigger than him. I'd be probably leaning toward a submission victory for Pyfer. I think that, anyone who's finished Gastelum has in the last kind of 6-7 years has been by submission. We've seen him do it. Was it against, I'll pull up his record here. Who was it? He picked up and dumped on the canvas and then submitted him with a head and arm choke. A fellow powerhouse.
Abdul Razak Al Hassan.
That's the one, good man. Yeah, an arm triangle. Yeah, so he definitely has the capability. So an L arm triangle, of course. So I wouldn't rule out a submission win for Pyfer, but like that, a guy who's come into the UFC and picked up 4 finishes in his first 5 fights, like you said, it'd be good to see him actually get some rounds under his belt against a good standard of fighter and see what he's really made of.
Yep, absolutely. Good shout on that one. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the middleweight division. Also interested to hear, very interested, I gotta say, to hear see what happens in this next fight. I mean, for a long time, we spoke about UFC missing out on opportunities to sign fighters outside of the UFC. Lots of missed opportunities when the lawsuit was happening. It seems in recent years, obviously, we've seen MVP come in. We've seen Patricio Pitbull come in. We've seen, obviously, Kayla Harrison, who we talked about in the co-main event. On Saturday night, we get to see former Bellator bantamweight champion Patchy Mix, and I think it's a fantastic sign, and I'm super excited to see him mix it up at the very best in the UFC. His first dance partner, Shawnee, Mario Batista, a very good matchup to get him kicked off in the bantamweight division, and lots of exciting fights. Obviously, he has to get through this one first. I'm just going to throw it out there first. I believe he gets through this one, no problem whatsoever. I think he's an absolute crazy price. I think he's going to get the job done. He's going to finish it inside the distance as well. I just think so much of Patchy Mix as a fighter and always admired his style. Yes, he had a little bit of a blip and lost the fight, but he's been tremendous in his run up to getting the bantamweight title, Shawnee, in Bellator. And he's a very, very worthy addition and an exciting addition into the 135-pound division in the UFC.
He is 100%. I'll throw a little bit of devil's advocate in here, right?
You gotta do it. You gotta do it. I'm getting, me, I get excited.
The one, I agree with everything you said, though. So the one fight he lost was Juan Archuleta, who's not a massively dissimilar fighter to Mario Batista. Now that was 5 years ago and everything like that. But here's a better bit of data. The Magomedov fight, the last one they fought obviously twice before. Very close fight. A lot of people think Magomedov actually won that fight. I went back and I watched it today, and there was a lot of that fight happened on the feet. Right now, the reason for that, as we know, Patchy Mix obviously very good on the ground, excellent submission game, and Magomedov, as Peter Yan and other people will attest, as an exceptional wrestler. So it was a lot on the feet, but a lot of it was Magomedov kind of fighting off the back foot and picking off and countering Patchy Mix pretty well. And if you watch some of the Bautista fights, we see him a bit against Aldo. I went back and I watched the Ricky Simon fight. What was the other? Was it the Benito? One of the Go to Canetti fight maybe I watched as well, where he's a lot of submissions in his game as well. He's a well-rounded fighter, but I think some of his best work comes when someone comes in and he kind of picks him off. And counters them, draws lads in. Now, Patchy's hard to draw in because he fights in that kind of slow, jabbing, southpaw stance where he just, he's looking for you to make a mistake so he can get the fight to the ground and take you down. If you're Batista and you look at that Magomedov fight, you're thinking, Jesus, this is man for heaven me. This is exactly what I want. A lad that'll wait and wait and wait. I'll wait and wait and wait. He'll make the mistake and I'll counter him and catch him. Because a guy who's not as good a striker as me and Magomedov was able to do it multiple times and kind of make it look easy. Big difference between that fight and this fight is that Mario Batista doesn't have the wrestling of Magomedov. And if you look at Patchy Mix, Sergio Pettis fight especially, he's obviously he's engaged enough to get married, not to Tatiana Suarez, and his wrestling has improved with that engagement an awful lot. The wrestling against Sergio Pettis looked absolutely amazing. I went back and watched that fight today. He just put him against the fence, picked him up and put him on his fucking arse multiple times, lifted him across the cage a few times. That's the method of victory here against Batista. Go across the cage, pick him up. Don't get hit in the weigh-in, but he will get hit in the weigh-in because Batista is good at that. But you can't stop. You have to get that jab going. You have to get inside, get the fight against the cage, pull him down and submit him if you're Patchy Mix. But if you're Batista and you can stop that and you can get it into a range where Patchy Mix has to make a few mistakes to get inside, your countering game can open up and Patchy Mix can be hit there. So I think it's an interesting fight. I do think Patchy Mix will win. I think the wrestling is good enough. And I think his ground game is absolutely exceptional. I think it'll be a Patchy Mix submission here.
Yeah, I feel the same way as well. And I feel Patchy will be able to close the distance, get the fight down, get the submission, Paul. Are you kind of leaning that way as well?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think he's an exceptional fighter. I think you're seeing two fighters here who are not really operating on the same level. Bautista's quite good, but Patchy Mix, I believe, I think is probably good enough to get in there with the best of the best at 135 pounds. And I think he's going to go in there and make a statement this weekend. He's brilliant at getting to the back, you know, and like the fight you mentioned there against Sergio Pettis. I mean, I saw him doing another fight as well. I can't remember which fight it was, but you know, he gets guys against the fence and then he'll sneak one hook in, lace a leg. Head position's good, body locks, but using the free leg to just springboard off the fence and then, you know, sinking in the proper back take like mid transition as they're flying toward the canvas. So just little details like that. I mean, he's always just looks like he's a step ahead of his opponents in the grappling. A real finisher. And like, I mean, when you go back into his record and the guys he beat over the last few years in particular, like we all saw the James Gallagher one, of course, and James Gallagher is renowned as an exceptional grappler, and he submitted James. Then he beat Horiguchi. Magomedov submitted him that time. Then Rafael Stotts and Sergio Pettis. So 5 wins in a row. Some great names
against serious opposition too, lads. And
yeah, and put away 4 of them. Ian,
yeah, that's the best of the best outside of the UFC there now, and that's why it has me really excited to see what he can bring to the table on Saturday night. And you know, if he can mix it up at one, and I truly believe he can mix it up at the very best at one in the 135-pound division as well.
There's one other point to go with that as well. You mentioned the likes of MVP, and of course we saw Chandler come over a couple of years back, Patricio Pitbull very recently, all past their prime, all just coming in and you know, for a swan song. This guy's only 31 and his best years are very likely ahead of him too. And if he's been doing that on his way up, what's he going to be able to do, you know, now? Or how's he going to look against the best guys in the UFC? I'm excited to see another player in that division.
I'd one just thing to add to that, and I hope this is not true, but relatively short notice. You mentioned the James Gallagher fight. He's missed weight before. I hope he gets to the scale. I hope he looks good on the scale, because if he makes weight and he doesn't look amazing, this Batista fight again. And Patchy's a pretty big guy for the weight class as well. You know, he's big and tall. Like Batista's a big guy for the weight class as well, but he was obviously preparing for another fight. So that's the one thing I would think about. But as you kind of alluded to, it's really exciting to see a guy as good as this in his prime getting to the UFC, and like he wins this fight, the title fights in the main event, he's going to be very, very close.
100%. Can't wait for that one. Opening up the main card, the welterweight division, Vicente Luque versus Kevin Holland. Should be a barn burner for as long as it lasts, Paul. I love Vicente Luque. I've expressed my love for this man over the last number of years on this exact platform. But, you know, the heart needs to be thrown to one side and the brain and the head needs to be activated here for me, and I just cannot see a way out of this for Vicente Luque. He's going to probably go in and try and stand and bang with Kevin Holland, and I think he's going to get clipped. He's going to get clipped early. Don't believe the chin is once what it used to be for Vicente, and I think it's going to be a tough night at the office for him. I'd love to see it go another way, but I think it will be. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be leaning that way too. And me and Shawnee both won money on Kevin Holland beating Gunnar Nelson at UFC London, didn't we? So I think
he actually won a bet for once, that lad over there. He's always losing bets and always bringing me down with him too.
Yeah, do you want to tell him about the syndicate here? Like, should we let the people know?
Go on. Yeah, well, we should let
every bet that we do now on, whether Ian does it or I do it, we both do it. So we have a syndicate. We all do all our bets together. So if I'm shit, Ian shit as well.
We win together and we lose together. That's it.
Oh, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh, it is. It already has been. He's bringing me down every chance that you get. He brings me down with Kevin Holland. Brings me down. Who was it last weekend? It was
Cortalaba.
Me and Ian last money. You don't need to mention it at all. I was there minding my own business, listening to the big podcast. Next thing I get slandered out of nowhere. But look at whatever gets you up out of bed in the morning, Shawnee. Paul, sorry, I rudely interrupted there. Side tangent there. We were talking Luque and Holland.
Yeah, I mean, Holland back down at 170. This is absolutely where he needs to be. I mean, he's been going, you know, digging into the middleweight division, but coming up against guys that were just too big for him. He's big and long and rangy at welterweight. Thinks that he can maybe carry that up to middleweight, but he doesn't seem to put on the bulk that's maybe required. And he's been in there against some big guys, the likes of Reiner, the Ritter and stuff. So, you know, they've just been kind of mowing him down a little bit, haven't they, inside the octagon? And he looked so much better last time out against Gunnar Nelson. I would expect him to try and stay maybe at welterweight now and maybe build on that, because realistically, he's just not a middleweight, you know. So, and he's catching Luque, like you mentioned, at a good time. Luque's best days certainly behind him. I think Holland, he's not got a UFC title in him, but he's a good fighter for sort of at that range of the welterweight division. He'll be a good test for guys trying to get into the rankings.
Indeed, it will. Shawnee, do you see this fight good? Yeah, predict any surprises here from the main man Vicente coming into this one? Because you can never totally count him out, I guess, but the time is a ticking for the boss man, and I think he could be running into a brick wall here.
Well, despite your love for Vicente Luque, we've both been on the Kevin Holland bandwagon for years, never jumped off it, and now we're going to ride that bandwagon back.
We're back. The wheels may have fallen off there, but the wheels is back on, and we're going straight to the top, baby.
Yeah, 4 nuts, put them back on. We're back. I would just, you said this one going as long as it goes. I would just wonder, would he take a little bit from that Gunny Nelson fight? Like Gunny Nelson and Vicente Luque, not massively dissimilar, apart from maybe Luque is a little bit more crazy and maybe more of a finisher on the feet. Maybe he'll be like, right, I'll take it easy against this guy on the feet. I'll have my shots, but maybe I'll take him down. Maybe I'll get on top. My jiu-jitsu is really good. I know his is as well. But if I can stay on top of him, I can. And first of all, if you can't finish him on the feet, it gives him a great chance. Now, the problem with that is with Luque, he can, he'll roll you over and anaconda you in 2 seconds. That could be an issue there. But I would just wonder if Kevin Holland has found a new way of fighting and will continue on it. But that's Kevin Holland, so almost certainly not. But yeah, I don't know. I just have a feeling. This one will be kind of close with Holland winning. Would be my call.
Indeed, love it. That wraps us up for the main card. We're gonna run through real quickly a couple of fights on the prelims. We'll get the lads' thoughts on one or two of them, maybe. Bruno Silva versus Joshua Van in the 125-pound division. That's a class fight. Really looking forward to that. Always love watching Joshua Van fight. As Azamat Muzarkanov, 14-0 undefeated, takes on Bredson Ribeiro. That's the guy that always goes walking in. Sean loves it. Sergey Spivak takes on Waldo Cortez Acosta in the 265-pound division. Now, a faltering heavyweight division too. That fight does really nothing for it as well. Chaos Williams comes in against Andreas Gustafsson. Gustafsson was supposed to fight last week against Jeremiah Wells. Comes in and faces off Chaos Williams, who's moved. No, has he moved down? I think he moved down in his last fight. He's down on 170 now for sure this time. Arielani Lipski da Silva takes on Kong Wang in the women's 125-pound division. O'Shawnee has some thoughts on that. I'll bring him in a second. Ju Sang Yo takes on Jeka Sarigi in the featherweight division. This is a mouthful, lads. Quillian Salkilade takes on Yanil Ashbouj in the lightweight division. And Marquel Medeiros takes on Mark Shunsky in the lightweight division.
Those are not real people. Those last 6 people do not exist. They're not real fighters.
What is going on? Anyway, I thought outside the first 3, that's the early prelim section that you could probably just miss if you wanted to, unless you're degenerate like myself, and will probably put money down and watch them all for excitement. Shawnee, when you're looking at some of the action on the prelims card, any ones that stick out to you?
I mean, Ariana Lipski is over 4-1 to win against Kong Wang. Kong Wang won against someone who's absolutely useless 2 fights ago. She looked good before that. She looked good in her last fight. But like, Lipski is one of these fighters who can lose to Molly McCann and then beat Casey O'Neill and finish her, submit her. Like, that's the type of fighter Ariana Lipski is. Ariana Lipski is someone when she's minus 400, you don't bet on her, and when she's plus 400, you do bet on her. She's that type of fighter. So me and Ian are going down on the Ariana Lipski boat this weekend. Can I ask you a question? This Andreas Gustafsson, is he related to Alexander Gustafsson? Is he his brother? Is he his cousin? What is he? Don't
think so. But comes in with a big reputation as a hard hitter.
Yeah, might be a distant cousin to him, maybe. I don't know. We'll say that he is. But I know one thing that he was the guy that they were going. They're giving him the UFC debut badge for tops. So they're going to have a badge on. He's going to be, I think, one of the first fighters that'll have the debut badge, or was supposed to be. Now, maybe there's debut fighters on. I haven't heard of any of those first 6 fighters, to be honest, lads. So they may be making the UFC debut, but they're going to put the badge on the shorts. Then what they do is they cut the badge off, they put them into collector's cards, and they trade them out. I am personally, hold my hand up, I do collect trading cards, UFC trading cards too. And that kind of, I think it's pretty cool personally myself, but not for everybody. But that's an interesting fact about Gustafsson. He was supposed to be the first fighter on May 31st to have that mantle, but maybe that'll be taken by one of the rest of the crew that's starting off there as well. As I said at the start, I really like that Bruno Silva versus Joshua Van fight in 125-pound division. I think that's a good fight to kind of get us warmed up for the main event. And we're nicely warmed up now after talking about that card from top to tail. Really excited for the main event. Interesting to see Merab as a guy, I think, who many were expecting to lose for many, 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 many years. And he kept defying us. Now, a lot of people are expecting him to win all the time. It's crazy how the tide turns for some fighters. I'm excited for the main event. He takes on Sugar Sean O'Malley, Juliana Pena versus Kayla Harrison in the co-main event. That has been the UFC 316 preview. It will all go down in Newark, New Jersey on Saturday night. The boys will be back next week, or on Sunday probably, to break it all down. I look forward to that, hearing that myself. You should be too. Enjoy the fights this weekend. Thank you, Shawnee, for joining me. Thank you, Paul, for joining me. Blame all complaints to Sean Sheehan when Ariane Lipski de Silva loses that fight on Saturday night. He's going to take me down with him, as he always does. Let's see what happens. Good luck, folks. Enjoy the fights. We'll talk to you again very